Well, hello, good morning. Bit of a slow start this morning, so sorry we're starting a few minutes late. And wanted to come on here, talk to you a little bit about last week and some of the things with. Hold on a second, I'm going to mute myself. There we go. All right. So I want to come on here and talk a little bit about some of the things from this last week, the online gambling blog I wrote. Some other things we're going to be talking about tonight or today in the group today at the therapist support group that we talked about before in the previous live stream, and just a lot of other things. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about some things. If you're live with us, drop some comments in the chat. Hopefully any questions that you have, be happy to answer some of those as well. Weird weather week this week here. Definitely a shout out to Ryan Hall, y'all, which is a live stream on YouTube when there's severe weather. We had tornadoes on Sunday, which is not abnormal for us, but something that we weren't expecting. So I was with my parents, and all of a sudden, tornado sirens going off and all that. So they kept us safe. I like their approach to it. It's a little bit more local than some of the big stations, unless you have like a specific, you're near a specific bigger city, in which my parents are not. So just shout out to them. Awesome opportunity there. Also, another shout out to Gary Gillian, I think is the last name. He's a Scotsman who lives in Winnipeg, I believe, or Edmonton, one of the places in Canada. I was on his podcast on Wednesday. Looking forward to that episode for you guys. Really cool conversation. I felt like it was really the first conversation we had where I was able to move from kind of talking about sex addiction, which has been most of the things I've talked about in my career, at least on podcasts anyway, and then moving to more of a talking about my own business and how I see mental health and wellness and those kind of things. So really looking forward to that for you guys. I think it's a good opportunity. Something that's going to be a lot of fun for you guys. I think you're going to learn a lot. So I'm looking forward to that as well. This week, so going to have a little bit different setup, not too different, but basically, if you noticed, I did post a video last week, but there was some information on there I didn't like that I felt was misrepresentative. Not of the topic about mental health and life coaches and differences between those two, but more so about some things that I had talked about with my friend that played in the NFL. So I want to make sure I had those things correct. So I decided to take the video down. But it did give me a good structure for future videos so that I can come back and edit a little bit quicker. So that I was appreciative of. So I'm glad that we had a chance to put that out there. I'm looking forward to doing more of the videos. The way I'm probably going to do it is, 1 week we're going to do live stream, next week we're going to do video, just kind of switch them on and off, and then always have some type of writing or blog or comment or topic or whatever during the week that we're going to touch on. So this week's topic was online gambling. Now, just to kind of preface this as well, I'm coming from two perspectives. One, I'm not an online gambling addiction specialist by any means. I have worked with addiction, specifically with sex addiction. And again, that's a little bit different than other addictions, but there's some similarities. So I kind of feel like I can speak a little bit to some of those similarities and some of the things that might fit with how those all kind of come together in regards to online gambling. The other thing is I'm only coming from Michigan. So if you know anything about some of the legalized sports betting that's been out in our country, there are certain states that have different regulations with that. Now, Michigan's one that it does allow online sports betting. So we've been inundated since I probably want to say 2019. It feels like that was around the time it started happening. We've been inundated with all kinds of advertisements. I listen to the sports talk radio in Detroit, and they'll just probably every commercial break, there's at least one. FanDuel is one of the big ones we hear a lot about, but all the sports betting across the board and all the hosts talk about it. So sports betting has become a huge thing. And so why are there some dangers with it? Well, it's kind of like any addiction, right? It's something that can become a really slippery slope. Even if it doesn't end up hurting you directly in the immediacy, it may hurt your family down the road. It may be an unhealthy habit that you pick up. There's other things about it that don't help your overall wellness. So kind of want to address that. I did a little bit in the blog, but just want to kind of touch on a few things I was thinking about with it too. Number one thing I guess I would say is really ultimately I talk a lot about our intimacy with this device right here. This intimacy we have with the phone is vastly different than some intimacy we even have with other people. We talk to the phone, we ask the phone questions, we learn from the phone, we see things on the phone for all different kind of things we learn for entertainment. for all different types of purposes. So there's an intimacy with their device, and we talk a lot about. I've talked about in our places, boundaries with the phone, not letting the phone go in the bathroom, go in the bedroom. Making sure you maintain that. Again, that's a tough thing. That doesn't necessarily come easy. Having a place where the phone goes at night. If it's the office, if it's a garage space, a basket, something like that. Online sports betting, I feel like, can amplify because you have access to it all the time. This isn't something where you're going to the casino or you're going to the sports betting window or whatever, where you physically have to go to it. That's one of the things that's changed about so much of this with their devices that we didn't have access to before. Strip clubs, pornography, all those kind of things were things that people had to access and go to a physical location to entertain. Same with betting. The phone has brought it to us all the time. It's brought to us everywhere we go. And so it's really important that we think about the idea that this is a slippery slope for us all, because the reality of it is the fact that we have access to these things 24/7. And so one of the things, like I said, first to start with, is that online sports betting becomes an issue because it can be something that can draw us in when we're just living our everyday life. You see these odds and the betting lines and all those kind of things change all the time. They change every day. Sometimes they change every hour. It seems like they change every minute to some degree. So one of the things we need to be aware of is the fact that there's a close intimacy of those things. And so we're going to be out of reality if we spend a lot of time thinking about those. Now, when you make any kind of financial, contribution, whether it is or it's a stock exchange or whatever, there's a risk involved, right? And some level of risk is okay. Some level of risk is good, to get a reward from that. But there's also levels of risk that can be very, again, out of hand of that. For the average person, maybe $5 isn't a huge deal. Maybe $5, to the sports bet to get $50 back is not that big a deal. Maybe that's all that they feel like that's safe for them, and it's not going to be something that's high risk. For some people, that's not enough. $5 turns into $10, turns into $15, turns into $20, turns into $100, and it just keeps escalating. So for some people, that might be a very unhealthy thing to do, is to start putting yourself in that position where higher risk, high reward. It seems like people get I'll use the word obsessive about the outcomes. They get very obsessive over whether they're going to win or they're going to lose, and that's where they focus. And in a lot of ways, that's sort of like an escapism. So a lot of ways, it's similar to if you watch pornography, it's because you get a period of time where you're not in reality. Same with, sort of with drinking, same with drugs. There's a period of time where all these kind of things take us out of our pain, take us out of our worries or anxieties or concerns, wherever they're at kind of in the moment. So I really think it's important from a perspective of our online gambling habits, or certainly your habits that you're choosing to do online. How are those escalating? Because again, it can take you out of reality. It puts you in fantasy, and you're thinking about all the things you're going to do when you win all this money. Now, some people might say, okay, well, Patrick, $5 isn't a big deal, but what about somebody who, is, I'm not gambling millions of dollars or thousands of dollars, whatever the case is. It can escalate to that. I mean, I certainly would want to say the same kind of thing happens with other addictions. It's like, what used to be 5 minutes or used to be exciting for 5 minutes is now exciting for 15, for 20, for an hour, for 2, whatever it is. If it's affecting your life to the degree that it could be, or maybe, you have to be honest about that. So certainly I think that's maybe like number 2. So number 1 is there's an intimacy where they're kind of breaking from it. The second piece is that, it spends a lot of time, we spend a lot of time kind of in high risky type behaviors. The third part of it, I guess I'd say, is that, because it takes us out of reality, it hurts the people around us because we're no longer present. If I'm on my phone watching all the gambling lines and focusing on doing those kind of things, I may not even be gambling a lot of money, but I'm focusing on all these types of things going on. I'm missing everything that's going on around me. I'm missing time with my family. I'm missing time with my friends. I'm missing time with my partner. And that's the way it starts to affect our people. I know in Michigan, we have a commercial that they put on for the Michigan Gambling Hotline, and it basically shows this guy, and he's gambling and he loses everything around him. Well, I'd argue that before you even lose all those things around you, you actually end up losing all those things first, because they become invisible to you before you lose them, so to speak. So I think part of that commercial is true in the sense that in the end, you don't have anything in that sense because they're all gone because you've gambled it away or lost it. But I would say the other part of that first is that, you've kind of lost it because you've made yourself invisible and you made other things invisible around you because you're not present in reality. So there's things we can do about that. If you've heard me talk on anything else, you probably heard me talk about grounding. I think that's a big thing. Certainly, with online gambling, certainly again, breaking from the phone is a big piece of that. We talk about this regarding video games. You talk about this regarding social media. You talk about this in anything in that term, but basically getting away from being in that space. Moving yourself into a position where you're going to be present with yourself, present with your surroundings, present with the people around you. If you're at dinner, engaging conversations with about with people around dinner time. If you're going out with people, engaging conversations there. If you're out hiking, engaging with the wildlife, engaging with the surroundings around you. If you get too focused on what's going on the virtual space, you're going to lose what's going on in the real space. And so I think it's really important to think about, how are you engaging with, the virtual world versus the real world. So kind of are you being grounded in that reality? Another thing I would say with that as well is if you're not being grounded in that, how are you breaking from the phone? What kind of exercises are helping you to stay away from that? I know we talk a lot about journaling, but certainly there's a lot of other ways you can do that. Finding things that you enjoy doing. You might say, well, I enjoy gambling. Maybe you have a limit with your gambling. Again, putting it at a number is probably a lot better than a time, because it just gives you much more flexibility as far as being able to know, okay, hey, I gambled my $10 for the month. I'm not allowed to gamble anymore beyond that. Again, those are boundaries, but they're boundaries that are tough to employ. But I think one of the things we have to understand is that in order for us to be able to live in a balanced space, we have to be disciplined in those areas. And there's certain areas in our lives we're very disciplined in. And I will say that even true for myself. But then there's our areas we really struggle in discipline. And so discipline is not a bad thing. Discipline helps us to be able to have that balance. And that's what we're looking for, I think, is really to find that balance. Anything that's made an extreme is going to end up leading us down an unhealthy path. So I just really want to think about the idea of where's my balance with my gambling and with what I'm doing and my actions and my behaviors in that sense. Another thing I think that's also to consider as well, and I kind of talked about it in regards to, talking about with pornography aspect is the virtual space is, again, a virtual space that has a lot of intimacy with us because we're always engaging with it. And so the further we can get it from that at different periods of time, taking breaks from the phone, certainly, if you go for a walk, don't take your phone with you. If you, take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, hour, whatever it is, put your phone on silent, put it away, break from that, because the more you engage with it, I think the more obsessive thinking happens. And again, that's a tough word to use. I don't really like words using the word obsessive, but I do think it's a word that you have to consider. Like, this is am I thinking about that more than I'm thinking about the things I need to think about in my life, or the people in my life, or the relationships I have, or my responsibilities, or whatever. Like the more we focus on that, we're more likely going to put ourselves in that spot. So those are some things to consider. Again, if you're in a position where you need help, there are gambling hotlines that you can reach out to. They can connect you with somebody to work through that with you. There are specialists who work with gambling addiction. If you're a therapist or a life coach and you're interested in working in that population, certainly Google that. There's a bunch out there. Much like a CSAT or like a certified sex addiction therapist, I'm sure there's a certified gambling addiction therapist. I think actually, and I think about it, ITAP I think is working on having a distinction for that, or like a specialty in that area. Resources, again, statewide resources, but also, think about reaching out to somebody who is a therapist or life coach who can help you. Again, life functioning is a big piece here. If gambling is affecting your life, meaning that it's affecting your life and causing you emotional distress, it's probably something to look into, to work with somebody. It doesn't have to be, but certainly the idea that people can do it on their own, especially with addictions, you kind of, it's a hard road to do it by yourself versus trying to do it without some level of support and success. It's hard to have success without some level of support, I guess is a better way of putting that. So definitely something to consider about if you're considering looking into finding someone who can help you there. So as far as online gambling goes, that's something that, again, if you're interested in talking with me as well, you can also reach out. Our email is bloomworkscc@gmx.com. Switch gears a little bit from that topic. If there's anything else, anyone else would like to talk about that, or comments or questions, certainly shoot me an email, drop a like in the chat, drop a comment in our video. Be happy to talk to you more about that. I don't, like I said, I don't have a lot of experience working with gambling. Just based on my work with addictions, I kind of, just kind of sort of plugged and played a few of those things based on what I know about how the virtual space is affecting our reality. And I think it's affecting it in so many different ways. And I've talked about that in our podcast and things like that. But wanted to share a little bit about, again, we talked about this last time I did this live stream because I do them right before we meet. But I'm part of a counselor support group. Great group of folks. We're up to about, I think we've got now 5 people in our group, led by a guy named David Frobish, who is he actually, I met him a couple of years ago, or maybe about a year ago now, year and a half ago, who did the, actually about a year and a few months ago, I met him. Who does the training for clinical supervision for therapists. So if you would like to be a supervisor, he's definitely somebody. If you live in Michigan, he's somebody who's worth checking out. He can, his course is really good. It's several weeks long, but it's one of the better ones, I think, as far as the time and the cost and et cetera. It's kind of it's a good balance, I think. So David started a few months ago, what he calls counselor support groups or counselor empowerment groups. And the idea there is that he wants therapists to have other support with other therapists. And that's a tough area sometimes within the field. You heard me talk on a podcast not long ago about some of the infighting that happens within the field. And so that's something that does happen. So knowing you have other colleagues that are supporting you is huge. And I always appreciate the feedback. I think we learn a lot from one another, just hearing about, different experiences we go through and things we struggle with. So definitely, if something that you guys are interested in, let me know. I will definitely connect you with David so you can be able to join one of the groups. Our particular group this week's topic is we're talking about compliments. Something we kind of started talking a little bit about last week. And again, I don't want to get into too many details about it because obviously we're trying to keep confidentiality to things with one another. But what I will say is our topic was kind of on compliments. And so one of the things that kind of came out of that was that we struggle personally as therapists, but I think as people to accept compliments. I know for me, I do. Not necessarily so much from people who I'm working with, but I think I certainly struggle with it from a perspective of people saying things positively about who I am. Haven't quite determined or discerned why that is. Don't really know why I have that feeling. I think because the best thing I could say is that it brings unwanted or undesired attention to me about something that I don't see in myself. I always seem to see myself in a perspective that I'm less than something, right? I'm less than so-and-so, I'm less than, and I know the comparison is the thief of joy. And I don't sit there to tell you this because I think that that's the healthy way of approaching it. I'm telling you this because I'm aware of it. And I feel like it's something that I struggle with. So hopefully that resonates with you, but compliments, I think, are a struggle because it feels like we're being, I look at it as we're being kind of amplified over something than what we really are. And so it's uncomfortable for me when somebody says that I've done something that I don't see myself as reflecting in that same way. Now, I feel like my self-esteem is a whole lot better than it used to be. Certainly when I was a teenager, it was really bad. But I don't know that I think poorly of myself as much as I think that sometimes there's aspects of what I do in my talent base and my talent pool, I would call it, that I only see as being limited. So what other people see maybe my talent maybe being a 9 or a 10, I see it like a 6, or maybe it's like an 8, and I see it like a 4. I think it's just a mismatch in how I see my own skill set or my own skills or whatever to other people. So when people compliment you, especially on if it's things like looks or it's things like something you said or something you did or impacts you made. Sometimes it's hard to hear just because you're like, well, I don't really think I did a whole lot. I just sort of did what I would normally do. I showed up. I was professional. I did whatever. So I think that's a big piece of kind of compliments for me and why I struggle with it. And so why I'm sharing this with you guys is because it's a situation where I think it's a little more vulnerable for me to kind of do like, hey, this is something I know I struggle with, and hopefully it resonates with you guys. And if there's some topic around that, let me know. Be happy to talk more about that as well. Talk a little more with you about compliments and what those look like and the struggles you guys have with that as well. So if you feel open to sharing that, love to hear that. Also want to update you guys on the Patreon channel on kind of where we're at. I changed some tiers with it a little bit. I wanted to make it a little more useful in different ways. So there is still a free membership. You guys can certainly join the channel for free. a lot of the free material on there is the podcasts they do, some of the blogs I've written or I do write, some of the different material that I have on there is free. So the Patreon channel definitely has a free membership access point to it. So certainly you're welcome to do that. There's a $10 kind of mid-range fee now. And what you get with that is some exclusive, general support. You have access to a few more of our community groups that I've created on there. So we have one for Bloomworks community, which is kind of like an overall that's available in the free part. We have a dating category, a depression category, an anxiety category, and then what I'm calling the plant, that's kind of the $10 tier. And the plant category just gives you basically a little more access in the free stuff. So you're going to have access to a few more of the blogs, some of the writing, anything that's like linked and stuff like that. I try to always make it free because again, it's already out there. So why you pay me for it kind of thing. But like actual original creation stuff, I try really hard to make sure that's in that plant category. And then there's a $20 tier called Bloom, which right now nobody's signed up for. If we get some people signed up for it, be happy to start to do some exclusive type things. So these live streams are going to be free for the most part for people, obviously on YouTube, but certainly there's going to be some free on Patreon. But if you're interested in doing these as very specific tiers, I'll start to do that as well. Want to have an access to one-on-one type of approach, even if it's not necessarily direct coaching, just as a support, but then hopefully to move toward the direction if you want to work with me individually, you'll have some access there. Remember, there is still the Bloom Protocol Masterclass is still available. We're still open spots for that. That is a 12-week course in total, but if you would like to do it in a shorter period of time, I kind of have a 4-week and a 6-week option as well with that. So you have some tiers. You're not going to get the whole experience, but maybe get a little bit something out of that as well. And then I'm also planning on trying to start putting out some information specifically for course specific work. So the one big one I'm thinking about is definitely doing a sex addiction type 1. And then potentially as well adding, I'm going to probably do one on kind of business culture and some stuff like that. So those are some things I'm kind of in the works here that, keep your eyes open for on the channel. I'm trying really hard to make sure I put as much content as I can on there all the time. I'm always updating stuff I find things on Pinterest that I really like that are like different little meme things that people have or things on LinkedIn. Those are kind of the two big ones I use on all the community boards. So there's certainly an aspect of there where it's definitely a community growth. We want that to be an area for people to be able to feel like they're supported. And again, like I said, if you're interested in working one-on-one with me, there's availability with that too. So bloomworkscc@gmx.com is the email. If you click on the Patreon channel about section, there is 2 links. There's a contact link if you'd like to leave your contact information. I can reach out, or you can schedule with me for a 30-minute free consultation. I do offer that, so we can get a chance to see if we work well together, if we want to work together, what your goals are, and those kind of things. So definitely check those out if you have an opportunity. I always appreciate getting a chance to hear you guys and hear your stories. And like I said a few weeks ago, I was part of that podcast we did a live show on, and there were some great questions. So I know there's some great questions out there, and I'm hoping to be able to answer those and work with you guys moving forward. So thank you so much for being here today. Continue to do great work. Continue to move forward, and we will talk to you guys here in about 2 weeks for the next live stream. Take care.